We've got a new edition on the Off the Sideline Property Podcast. It's an additional new segment we're doing now called Tesla and Property Talk. I've got my 5'8" and co-host, Ona Sassari, next to me.
Hi guys, pleasure to be on again and extracting value for you guys so that you can feel empowered in your property journey. We've got our producer in the back as well. He's just monitoring things and making sure that things run smoothly as we are driving. Everything is wireless, nothing's handheld. So yeah, thanks again for being with us. So Daniel, I guess the topic of discussion is really pitfalls that clients experience whilst purchasing property, and I guess ways to kind of mitigate that and ensure that they are buying a quality grade asset. So yeah, let's talk about that and talk about how we help our clients just buy well and buy right.
Well, I think a lot of the stories really come to us when people have already had those bad experiences, and then we are sort of a danger control sort of fixer-upper to assist them with the issues that they have made previously. So a lot of things that I see people doing is they're making offers on houses without even having their finance approved, which is really concerning, because if you're putting down, $1,500 to $2,500 0.5 deposit every single time, and you're missing out on properties, 4 properties, that would cost you 10 grand. Yep. Whereas you wouldn't have those issues if you went to a professional like ourselves, a buyer's agency. But also you see that the problems where people have had these issues then come to us and we've rectified them. So that's one thing that a lot of people are really doing that's affecting them as well. But also I noticed people aren't even doing pest and building inspections. They're just buying places without even looking at it. It's just insane. And then what's going to happen is these people are going to buy an asset that's going to cost them $50,000, $100,000 to fix up, and then they're going to be calling an agent to sell it at a reduced price, and making them lose money. Exactly. So it just makes more sense to get your ducks in a row, eggs in the basket, and see your professionals, which we talk about on all our other podcasts about the right things to do. But I think also now it's really becoming more of a buyer's market. So like you've got so many people, hundreds of people looking for properties, and they were just getting sold online. People weren't even doing inspections, nothing, all the things we previously talked about. But all those, I guess, buyers that were sort of just buying for the hell of it or the fun of it, and sort of paying, 5-10% over, I feel like now it's more of a time for the purchasers to be able to negotiate better. They've got more power in their corner. There's not hundreds of people going for a property anymore. There's more stock becoming available that I'm noticing. You would have noticed that yourself with...
Yeah, that is right. Yeah, we are finding that stock is becoming a bit more prevalent than previous months, and buyers are having that bargaining power to negotiate deals, put their best foot forward, and tell real estate agents that they are considering other properties. So if your vendor isn't willing to come to the party and get a deal across the line, they will be moving on. So yeah, it's really giving savvy buyers leverage and a stronger foothold in the negotiation process. And to that point as well, Daniel, talking about people purchasing without pre-approval and people just buying things offline and not even organising virtual inspections and pest and building inspections as well, that will go against them long term. Because what happens when you buy and then there's little bits and pieces that aren't functioning well, you can get leaking taps, leaking showers, hot water's not working, and all these minor issues that, when added up and if not negotiated well through a pest and building report, can be another significant cost which can impact your lifestyle. That cost could go towards something else, whereby you're putting that into a property because you haven't done your research correctly and you haven't engaged a qualified pest and building inspector that's reputable, that's working for you to go through the property for you to mitigate all these risks.
And that's like a good point with previously in relation to your pre-approvals and stuff. It's like, example, would you go to DFO or to Woolworths and go shopping without your wallet or your phone to pay pass? That's literally what it's like going shopping without a pre-approval, like going to the shops with no wallet. Like, what are you doing? You're just browsing, you're just wasting time.
That's right.
But I think in relation to the negotiation side of things, I've noticed that even real estate agents over the last few weeks are being more receptive, because before the price guide was always say 700 and you would try and negotiate money off it. Now, the last year or two, to actually get anything for that price guide was a deal, was a bargain, was something well negotiated. Most things were going for 50, 100K more than what they were actually worth. So now the agents are starting to let people negotiate more. There's more stock on there. It's just really, now's the time to get your professionals ready and get your services ready to really be able to negotiate. And as we talked about earlier on the podcast today, people are only looking at, last year's growth of 20% and then say, some areas may drop by 5% this year. You still had a growth of 15% in those areas. But the areas that we're focusing in have so low vacancies and that sort of stuff as well. And the drivers from all the internal immigration from other states and other areas is just really driving the price and the rent up. So I don't think there will be much market correction in a lot of areas we're focusing on. I think that the market, they need to catch up to the market per se. And then I was reading an interesting article on Southeast Queensland last night when I was about to go to sleep. And it said that from 2010 to 2020, Sydney had this huge, massive growth. Melbourne had this huge, massive growth, did all this sort of stuff. And Brisbane did nothing.
Yeah.
So Brisbane's had a bit of growth over the last couple of years, which has been great, but it's been stagnant for 10 years before that. So they're not just going to do what the rest of the country is doing. Like Southeast Queensland is a huge driver for the growth. You can see that with 80,000 people moving internally from not just New South Wales and Sydney, but a lot of Victorians are moving to Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, all Queensland locations just for the weather. But then also with the lockdown in Melbourne and things like that, everyone just wanted to get out. They were stuck in their cold, miserable units. And now they're living on the beaches, living the dream on the Gold Coast, Hunter Valley, Central Coast. Like, there's so many options for those people.
Yeah, that's right. And what people are calling this movement the exodus to affordable lifestyle is because people are foregoing your shoe boxes in Sydney and Victoria and, spending $1 million, $2 million on a property there and getting something decent, a quarter acre block and more, and you're getting better land size, you're getting a better quality build as well out there. So you're just getting more bang for your buck in these areas, and being able to work from home as well remotely, it's just making people realize that, do I really need to be in a place whereby I'm always maxing out and everything's expensive, or can I go to an area whereby I can raise a family or invest in and it's not impacting my wallet and my lifestyle too much? So people are realizing that, and that's contributing, or has contributed to the massive growth we've seen. So I guess, like, since Sydney has done so well and Melbourne has done so well recently in the past, and where do you think the next hotspots are, and what are we doing for our clients right now?
To be 100% transparent, I think all the areas we're focusing on are the hotspots, and it's not a biased opinion that the areas we're looking in have the best growth. It's also the infrastructure and the government's 20-year map that are pushing the drivers and the growth as well. And if we're both on the same page as the government about where they want people to create wealth and create infrastructure, all we need to do is focus on those areas and use our method of strategy that we use on our clients, and they're going to have the best suburb, the best asset, and the best type of return possible that we can find them. But in relation to what types of areas, for me personally, I still think the beach locations are really popular, not just for the lifestyle side of things, but also for the Airbnb and the investment side of things. People are really starting to utilize time more. Like I've noticed in the Central Coast, that's happening a lot as well. But even in the Hunter Valley, like people are starting, instead of having the weekend off, they're going up there on a Thursday or a Wednesday and working remotely, enjoying the weekend, and then coming back. And then they're spending not 1 or 2 days there, they're spending 4 or 5 days there. They're getting to know the local markets, the local people, the demographics, who's who in the zoo, right? So now everyone is starting to become familiar with that. Then they can see themselves living there. And it's not like, oh, you know, Central Coast, Cessnock, Wollongong, these places aren't just holiday destinations anymore.
Yeah, that's right. And even Adelaide as well, that's still a market that's pumping. Marion, Onka, Paringa, and other LGAs are still showing signs of strong growth, and that's an area whereby we focus on our clients too, because Sydney's kind of led growth in terms of what it's done in the past. Melbourne has followed closely, and Brisbane, and now we're seeing that Adelaide's up next because, again, you've got your lifestyle, you've got your beaches, you've got your low vacancy rates as well in these areas, and people are starting to realise that Australia isn't just one capital city. There's other areas that can provide the same lifestyle, the same experience, but you just got to be able to do that research and I guess understand the numbers and how that plays in your life, you see.
Yeah, and I think, like, to your point, Adelaide's really good for people that are okay with investing out of state, sorry. And then also your Southeast Queensland, Gold Coast, that sort of stuff as well is for people that want to go out of state. But then we've also got areas in New South Wales like we talk about all the time, your Cessnock, Hunter Valley, Central Coast, that sort of stuff. For people that
Maitland as well.
Yeah, for people that just want to say, hey, I've got an investment, but I want to know if I can go for a drive for 2 or 3 hours, I can see it. And it's physically there, they can see it, they can feel it, and know it's there. So
yeah, a lot of people like that.
Yeah, exactly.
That ability to see it, which I guess, look, you don't want to deter people or I guess tell someone to buy in Bali or like an area whereby they're not familiar with. So if people have that ability and if it suits their comfort level, then by all means, I guess if you are to invest, you think of property as a property ladder. Your first investment won't be your last. So you can start with an area you're comfortable with and then build confidence through research and further understanding.
Well, the way I like to look at it is your property journey is not a destination, it's a journey.
Sure.
You're going to go back and forward, you're going to go up and down. Your property may decrease 5%, it may increase 50%, but you have to factor that into your property analysis, because it's just not going to go up all the way. If it did, everyone in the world would 100% have all their money in property. Which it's not like that. We have a majority of our money in property because we believe that it has those growth aspects and other assets involved in the journey.
Yeah, sure.
And what are your thoughts on Sydney in general? But I guess it's probably a two-part question because I feel like Sydney is being broken into two categories now. I feel like it's Western Sydney and then Sydney. Like there's just so much drivers going out in the west for your Campbelltowns, your Mount Druitts, your St. Mary's, Narellan, all that sort of stuff. I don't think they're going to have much correction with the airport and things coming up so soon.
Yeah, that's right.
What do you think?
Yeah, like my thoughts regarding the southwest, it's a massive urban sprawl area. There's a lot of land and a lot of growth potential. It has realised substantial growth, and I feel like it's still growing. It still will realise growth. Just because one, the airport's not finished. Two, there's people still migrating. Real estate agents we're talking to on the ground, they're still seeing a high number of inquiries of people looking to relocate to that area. So even a gentleman we had on our podcast, one of the top real estate agents in Sydney Southwest, it was like, look, he's seen people from the inner west of Sydney relocating to Sydney Southwest because they can work from home. They can have a bigger block of land and media rooms and Zoom rooms and all that kind of stuff, right? So you're just getting more bang for your buck. And then what happens is, I guess once this area becomes so established, it just gets harder to pivot, harder to further buy. So for example, like your Manleys and your Burwoods, Chatswoods, inner city areas, it's difficult. These are desirable areas, but now they're blue chip, right? So what's coming up next? Where are the opportunities? And that's what savvy property buyers are looking for. If your affordability isn't in that $2 to $3 million mark, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I talk about a lot, I feel like people always measure everything from the city, right? But let's say this year COVID has let us travel a lot more, and I'm back to my normal sort of traveling patterns and things like that. I reckon, what are we in now, June? I've been to the city 4 times in 6 months. I've been to Gold Coast more than I've been to the Sydney at the moment. So why are we still measuring everything from the city location, which we're not going to? Like, people are really starting to work out where their life is, what that involves, and where they're based. So city's not really the measuring point anymore, like Sydney City. It's more or less where they're located. How far are they from, if you're in Terrigal, how far are you from the highway, Gosford, how far are you from the shopping centre? Yeah. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, like everything's 10 minutes.
Yeah, 100%. And like every region has got their employment hubs. So people want to be very close to those employment hubs, those amenities in that specified region. So I guess if I was based in Newcastle, how far am I from the main strip in Newcastle? That's going to be my yardstick, right? So yeah, that's a really important factor there.
And look at the properties that we're purchasing as well. They're all, example, the ones in, say, Cessnock, from the Cessnock CBD, most of them are walking distance.
Yeah, same.
Like, you can't get walking distance to a CBD and buy a house that has future development, granny flat potential, knock down, rebuild apartments. Like, you just can't get that. And people don't realise it until we show them. And it still amazes me how many people are amazed with what we show them and the strategies that are involved in it. And it's not rocket science. We just have the right relationships and the right connections and have a pretty good strategy.
Yeah, and I guess people can do this for themselves, but it does take time. It does take effort. And it's not really about the first property you find you're going to buy. It's just, you've just got to be persistent. You've got to be assertive in terms of negotiating a deal. A lot of people don't understand that when it comes to property, there's really 2 points of negotiation too. So your first initial offer that does get accepted, and another point of negotiation after your pest and building comes back too. Do you know how to identify issues on that report and negotiate that? You see, so I think that's where, if you're smart and you do research correctly, you can really buy something well.
And I think that's a really good point too, as well, where you said that we look at, the negotiation, not just at the start, but during the process while we go through pest and building and things like that as well. Because back onto the point, like, we're not only saving people money in the purchase, saving people after the pest and building, the professionals that we're utilizing in our network are making sure that they're saving money from a legality perspective. They're not buying something that has all these legality issues that could screw them later on. Exactly. We're making sure our pest and builders aren't just getting the $300 or $400 cash and just going, yeah, it looks all good. Like, we've used them for numerous properties and got back thousands of dollars for clients. So it's just a no-brainer that once we show clients what we can do for them and how much we can help and the benefit, that they're all jumping on board. And now with the market sort of deferring to more of a buyer's market, it's really opening up a can of worms for us to just help more and more people get that property. And then you've got the people that talk about it for the last 10 or 20 years. Imagine if they did something about that. They'd have 5 properties.
Exactly right. And like I'm going to bring it back here, because I always hear like people saying, oh, I should have, could have bought this. I could have bought an Albion Park 20 years back, but I didn't because the price was too high then, for example. So it just goes to show that it's such a resilient asset. It provides stability. It's tangible. So Australians do have a love affair with property, and we're fortunate enough to be able to build wealth and be able to have abundant forms of research and information out there, so that we can, build wealth for ourselves. And really, what separates the doers from the people that say, "Oh, I wish," is just action. And whether it's using a buyer's agent or doing it yourself, as long as you're putting your best foot forward, there's information out there, and anyone can do it as long as they put their heart to it. So it just goes to show that it's not a matter of I coulda, shoulda, and like I wouldn't want anyone of my friends or family to be in that position saying that, oh, look, I should have bought in an area, but I was too scared, I wasn't too sure, I wasn't this, I wasn't that, right? So research and confidence is a massive thing.
I like your point about how you talk about how people can do it themselves and that sort of stuff. It's with anything in life, right? Like, if my toilet has a block and I went and watched YouTube for the next 3 months, I could fix my own toilet.
Yeah, but do you want to fix your own?
Do I want to? No. Do I have the time? No. Then I have to go out and buy the tools to fix it, where the plumber gets a discount because they bulk buy. Similar to us, we get better deals than consumers themselves. We get discounts because we buy 5 or 10 properties from a particular age in a particular area. It's the same thing. So
economies of scale,
Exactly. Like, if you want to go and do all the work yourself and then spend all that time just because you want to save a buck, the people that come back to us with problems that we've got to go and fix anyway, it just defeats the purpose of it. And I don't know why there's such a perception about paying for services these days. I feel like if you pay for a service, you want a quality service.
Yep. And like you can demand quality out of that service. You're paying someone for a reason. We use solicitors, we use mortgage brokers, we use pest and building inspectors, and if anything isn't up to scratch, we pull up our service providers, and 9 times out of 10 it's always rectified. So yeah, like people that are providing you this service, like they are your tools. They are your team. They're members of your team. You know, it's like if I wanted to build a house, for example, I'd need the tools and I'd need the smarts to build that house as well. So education and the right tools are really important.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like if you want to build your own house, by the time you went out and spent all the money on the tools, that's more than you'd pay for the builder to do it, who's a professional.
Exactly right.
So it's the same thing. You just really need to weigh up if you want to do it yourself, if you can do it yourself, if you have the knowledge, or you work it out that it's going to take you 3 months on your own, and then you buy nothing, and then you've got to then indulge our services anyway.
Yeah.
What's the point?
100%. So your vacancy rate really is from a quantitative kind of measure, is like the number of properties in that area. So if there's 50,000 properties in a certain area, how many properties of in that area are available for rate at any given time? And then you tabulate that or you calculate that month to month, for example. You can calculate it daily, whatever the yardstick is. And if less than 3% typically is available, then it's considered a low vacancy rate. So 3% of the total number of dwellings in that area, you can consider that a low vacancy. If it's more than 3%, then you'd say that's a high vacancy rate, and then you'd be mindful because then there's a challenge of getting that property rented by a tenant. So so it's really just how many properties are available in an area for rent at any given time, and that contributes to your low vacancy rate. And then people apply other measures to it and kind of quantify it in terms of the unit market in that area or the housing market. You can even apply it to the commercial market in that area too, in terms of vacancy rates. So investors like low vacancy rates because it means that, and there needs to be a proven track record of that, because if an area has a low vacancy rate, historically speaking, let's say for the past 5 to 10 years, it's fluctuated between 1 to 3% or less, then it's like, okay, I'm confident that I can find a tenant in this area. So if one tenant leaves, I can find another tenant in 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. And the areas that we're looking at are ranging from 0.1 to 0.8. So for us to find a tenant for the property, it's like take your pick.
Yeah, exactly right. So landlords are getting numerous applications. So landlords do have the opportunity to pick a tenant that would best fit their property. So that's always awesome, because ideally landlords would want a long-term tenant that's well suited to the property, that's going to look after it too, treat it like their own, and that's who's going to really get that property at that time.
Yeah, exactly. And there's no point kicking someone out of home for $5 or $10 if they're a brilliant tenant. You want to keep onto those guys long term and do the increases gradually, opposed to just stinging them with something all the time. It's a two-way relationship, I feel, and at the moment a lot of the relationships you need to have as from a landlord is a good relationship with your tenant as well. And that's where us as rental managers as well can chime in and make sure we facilitate that relationship, and then also make sure that we pair the right landlord with the right tenant to make sure that there's no issues or anything like that as well.
Yeah, 100%. Landlord-tenant relationships really important. If you look after your tenant, the tenant will look after you as a landlord, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship, and it's rewarding as well, because one, you're providing a space for someone to live in, a roof over someone's head, and you're receiving a weekly income from it, and that's helping you pay off your mortgage to the bank. And yeah, it's just a grateful. It's an honor. It's a nice responsibility to have, being a landlord, because of those factors. Like, you're providing a roof for someone to stay in, and you're receiving income for it, and you have a duty of care to make sure that that house that you're providing is in good shape, is in good form, it's safe, it's compliant. So you are accountable as a landlord, but it's a fantastic way to be remunerated and build wealth long term.
Absolutely, and I feel like the hardest thing is getting your foot in the door, right? Then once you've got one property, the rest is not easy, but there's a lot higher percentage chance that once you've already got one, if it's a good asset, it's performing well, you're going to get the growth, and then the yield's there also, so then you can buy your next property using the equity from your first place you bought. So you don't even need to keep saving for the cash.
Yeah.
It's pretty much like a savings account for you, essentially.
100%. So, for example, Daniel, let's say if someone's bought a place initially for 500 grand and their property's now worth 800, what's that process for them to go and purchase another property?
Well, let's say they bought the place 500,000 in, I don't know, 2015, 16.
Yeah.
Got some really good growth. Now it's at 800,000. So then what you can do is use 80% of that new value, which is 800,000, to then borrow money to buy a new house.
All right, so let's do the numbers on that. So 80% of 800
is 100. So 80% of 800 is 640,000.
Yep.
And then 640,000 minus your 500,000 would then give you $140,000 equity you could use to then buy a new property.
Wow. So then they'd be able to use that cash. So then that would be in a separate account as cash to go shopping, or how does that look like?
Well, they would have that as a deposit to then go and buy the house.
Yep.
You can go shopping with it if they wanted, but I probably wouldn't recommend spending $140,000 on shopping, because it is quite a large investment. But then the bank will give that to them as a pre-approval or as cash, depending on how it's structured, and vice versa. A pre-approval is essentially like money, or your cash is actually money, and then you can use those to either put down a deposit, your 20%, to then borrow the additional 80% from the bank.
Wow.
So to give you an example, anyone who's bought a property probably in the last 3 to 5 years, and they bought something that's performing well,
Yeah.
they would have a bucket load of equity.
Oh, there you go.
So that most people would qualify for that. But if you're someone that has a look at that and says, hey, I bought a property 5 years ago and I don't have much equity, I would be very concerned, because with some places in the last 5 years growing anywhere from 50 to 100%, if you haven't made any growth in the last 5 years, you've actually bought a pretty crap property that's not performing well.
Yeah.
So then what I would suggest is speak to someone like ourselves, and a professional, where we can do, our portfolio
Strategy review.
Exactly.
Go through the numbers with you and just identify what is better, really.
Yeah, and you might have bought in an area that has had some stagnant growth and is about to blow up soon. But more than likely, you've bought, an apartment or something in an area that hasn't had much growth. And then what's happened there is, what we need to do now is we need to look and see, hey, is this particular asset positioned to grow in the future, or should we offload this asset now and re-strategize? Because if you're buying a property that's not growing, then what's your strategy?
Yeah, 100%. Like, no one buys property to lose money, right? So,
Pretty much.
if so, and if you're a charity, let me know, because I'd be interested in your services. But yeah, and I guess that calculation method we just mentioned about using 80% and then subtracting your loan amount. So 80% of the current market value, subtracting the balance of your loan, that's called your borrowable equity. And that's how you can, I guess, refinance and purchase property again. So,
Yeah, and if you're not sure and you're not sure what you're doing, you just speak to your local mortgage broker or have a chat with us, and we'll put them in contact with the right professionals. Because let's be honest, like, a lot of people probably have no idea how to calculate half that stuff. Yeah. So they're just thinking, what am I calculating? And we'll just be writing numbers in a calculator. So then if they're unsure, then we can refer them. Or, if you've got a really good relationship with a broker, I would recommend reaching out to them, because that's their job, and they're going to help you generate that equity and help you structure it effectively to help you purchase those properties.
Yeah, 100%. And like, even if you run a small business or you've got a business, you can still have access to equity, whereby a lender that specializes in small business lending can look at your financial situation and determine if you can get a loan to purchase another investment or not. So there's solutions for people in all walks of life. People just think that it's the big four, but there's other lenders known as second tier lenders that will provide finance to other people in all walks of life. So yeah.
And that's the benefit of going to see your local broker, right? You just make sure that they say, hey, we've looked at your structure, your strategy, these 5 banks will fit your criteria, or these 10, or these 2, or whatever, instead of going to your bank and they just say no.
Yeah, for sure.
The other good thing about brokers is that they usually, if you have a good broker, will do like an annual review as well, or at least a 6-monthly review. Like, if you've been with a bank for 10, 20 years, I can promise you that the bank does not call you every 6 months and go, hi, Ernest, I just want to make sure you're happy with your rate. If not, we'll give you a lower one.
Exactly.
That's never happened to anyone in any banking, because they go, yep, we'll just set and forget them and keep charging them the interest we need to charge.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Sure. And like, since interest rates are rising right now, what can people do to kind of like manage their current interest rate? Like, if they're worried that they're going to be impacted too much in terms of lifestyle and all that kind of stuff.
Well, to be honest,
is it a phone call to the bank saying, look, I want a discounted rate, or do they look at other options? What do you reckon?
Depending on how your strategy or your structure was, if you went and seen a bank initially, I would probably see what their best offer is first.
Yeah.
And if they can't get you a better offer, then I would engage a broker's services. If you've used the broker previously or currently, I would reach out to the broker first, because the broker then will have an incentive. If that current bank's not going to give you a good deal, the broker will then get paid again to take you to another bank.
Yeah.
So they're inclined to find you a better deal, opposed to a bank who's already got your business, right? But the other thing too is, what people don't realize is when brokers and banks actually view their situation, they've already put a 3% or 2.5% to 3% buffer on it anyway.
Oh, okay.
So, example, say the rates on average are about, say, 3% now, roughly, right? The banks have already assessed that at 6% and are letting you borrow that. So the bank already knows you can afford that at 6%. So you don't have to worry about a thing. If the rate went up 10% in a short period of time, which it never has in the history of increases, then you would have to freak out. But the banks already factor these buffers in to ensure that you don't have any issues.
Yep. It's magnificent.
Yeah, like they've got everything you've already thought of.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant. So all these things that people are freaking out, that the banks are doing all these checking and things for you anyway, because they don't want you to default on your loan, because the bank's going to have to then charge off a loan and lose all their money that they've just lent out, which makes no sense whatsoever. So they're going to do their due diligence to make sure that you can afford to repay it back as well.
100%.
And it's not like how the banks in Australia were 20 or 30 years ago. Now that we have a thing called responsible lending, it's actually a requirement for banks and brokers to ensure that they've responsibly lent to you and you can afford to make the repayments.
Yeah, 100%. I like that.
So you've got every professional in your corner. So when people say, oh my God, it's going to go up 0.5%, your payments are $100 a month more, that's already been factored into everything. It's nothing new. It's not a surprise. It's not a scam. It's not anything. It's just exactly what they've already done, and they know what's happening. This was already planned 12 months ago, 18 months ago. So I think people really need to not stress and just make sure that they utilize the right professionals.
I agree, Daniel, and our producer Jay is telling us to wrap it up. Thank you very much, guys, for joining us on another episode of Off the Sidelines Property podcast. This is our in the car edition, Tesla and coffee. We're just at the Macca's drive-thru now, so we're just ordering a coffee right now. Should have got that at the beginning, but I hope you guys got value out of it. Please like and subscribe and follow us on whatever platform that you're listening to this on. And if you have any tips or I guess any ideas or any comments and feedback, we'd love to know that and include that in our upcoming content. Thanks, guys, and we appreciate your time.